Good morning, everyone, to our very first Skill Experts webinar. And this is about COVID-19, how, what now, and how we're going to adapt to the new normal. And for everyone who is going to watch this webinar, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Baluyo, and I'm the founder and CEO of Skill Experts. And my very special guest here is none other one of the trailblazers and forerunners in the recruitment industry, the managing director of Resource Options International, Brandt Handley. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Pam? I guess it's evening for you, right?
It
Are
is, it
you in the
is.
Philippines now?
Yes, I
I guess you're at
am.
the
And
other
as
side
much
of the
as I would
world.
love to go back right now at this very moment or very time, it's cold in Juneau, Alaska at this time, and it would be so nice to enjoy cool weather because it's so hot here in the Philippines.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Well, it's good to see your face again, and we haven't spoken for a while. So,
Yes, we
how are
haven't
you and
spoken.
your family and your staff doing? What's life like in the Philippines
Oh,
during these
well, right now it's
Covidian
a
times?
little bit, it's not, I'm not saying it's chaotic, but everyone is on their toes right now with what's happening. 2 months of 2 or 3 months almost of what do you call this? The quarantine. We call it an enhanced community quarantine, and we haven't really gotten a lot of traction except getting some stimulus packages from the government and some government agencies, as
Right.
well as a lot of people lost their jobs, got retrenched. Some are on a 50-40% lost in their salaries just to keep
Wow.
themselves afloat. Well, the business process outsourcing seem to have been resilient in these times because a little tweak in how the systems are set up, and people were able to work from home. There are
Right.
some that really lost some considerable income, but when it comes to being able to keep their jobs, at least most of the people in the virtual industry, how would you say it, the gig industry, they're still
Right.
working pretty well. And I'm glad that
Good.
the global economy in general, I mean, in terms of virtual and digital marketing and the digital world, it's still working quite well. So I guess this is the reason why I wanted to, like, share some insights, how are you going to, or how our business is able to recover from this, from this pandemic, because it's not really unprecedented, shall we say it, but and it's been a while since the last pandemic, and the
Right.
response of people in this scenarios, how are we going to cope up with everything that's happening.
Well, that's a very good segue to our topic today, Pam, because I have to tell you, I've been working virtually for a number of years,
I
but I
know.
believe there is a huge shift
Hmm.
that's going to take place. And I look forward to your questions, and our audience, whether they're with us today or watching this recording,
Hmm.
certainly am available for further discussions. But, there is certainly a revolution going on, and the new
Hmm.
normal is going to be very, very different than what we've seen in the past.
That's right. That's right. So I just wanted to start with the question: how did the pandemic hit your business? I mean, what's the very first thing that affected your operations in general? I mean, being in
Yeah,
the
well, thank
recruitment
you.
industry.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. I've been through a few recessions. I've been working over 30 years, and for obvious reasons, in that period of time, I've encountered these before. Not always in recruiting, but certainly the 08, 09 period, the
Mm-hmm.
most recent recession, I was in recruiting. And, I've learned that during these periods, one has to batten down the hatches,
Mm-hmm.
prepare for the storm. Recruiting and marketing are probably the two things that get hit the most during recessionary periods.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I was, well prepared that there would be no work.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, we had wrapped up a chief executive officer search that started in the fall, that literally on the brink of travel being, closed down, we got our
Oh,
candidate to visit with his employers in Germany. We were able to secure that, and then of
oh,
course, got paid for that placement in the very, final days of the normal times before COVIDian times hit. And quite honestly, Pam, I was prepared that we would have no work.
yeah.
The opposite's been true. And probably by dumb luck rather than design, when I set up ROI over 10 years ago,
Hmm.
our focus was on multi-industry, or rather agnostic to industry, and didn't specialize in any one area. Many recruiters do, but our
Hmm.
specialty is against middle market, C-suite executive search, all on a retained basis.
That's right.
And since we work across a number of industries, what's happened is there's been a shift to the other side of the boat, to
Hmm.
extend the sailing analogy. I would say that today our business is very essential industry focused. In the US, that's meant food production,
Hmm.
healthcare and safety, logistics, and even some residual non essential businesses that are now gearing up for the big
Hmm.
change. So, having expected a period of quiet and some vacation that was well needed,
Hmm.
we've been very, very busy at ROI. In fact, I would say today we're probably at full capacity as it relates to the search arrangements, and that's a good thing. So
Wow.
there's been a real shift, and we've had some conversations with some people, particularly in the healthcare industry, working 7 days a week, 7 to 10 hours a day. I mean, it's been almost exhausting. And so it's been a very lopsided impact on the
Hmm.
economy. And, it looks as if in the US anyway, some of the jobs are starting to come back. Many of the states are opening,
Yeah.
restaurants in many states are beginning again. And the service industry, which was hit so hard, is starting to recover.
Hmm.
Actually, in the last employment period, unemployment rate improved. It went from about 15% to about 13%,
Yeah.
which is still incredibly high given it was 3% before.
I know. I know.
But jobs are now coming back, and we're beginning to see, the beginnings of recovery.
Wow, that's great to hear. I mean, considering the service industry is also hit the hardest here in the Philippines because you can't deliver, you can't have, restaurants can't have dine-ins.
Right.
I mean, nail salons, barber shops, spas, everything. Tourism industry is really down because you could not, travel at all. You can't book anything. You can go outside the area where you are. I mean, I mean, where you're at right now, Brandt, was there any like sort of like quarantine measures that were implemented, and how long was it?
Oh yes, yeah. We were down for at least solid 2 months. I think mid March, and I'm currently at my home in Connecticut, until literally mid May.
Hmm.
We were total lockdown, total quarantine.
Wow.
The U.S. in many areas, with a couple of California being one, nationally, there wasn't really a shutdown order because
Hmm.
the way that the U.S. government system works is that many of the states have the authority to make
Hmm.
those types of changes.
That's right.
So what typically happened is California and some of the in Washington, where of
Major
course it began,
cities.
and Oregon, they were shut down and sheltered sooner, as early as I think the first or the second week of March. My son, who lived in San Francisco and is returning there, he hasn't quarantined there.
Hmm.
He was under lockdown before we were here in Connecticut. But as of mid-May, May 17th, May 20th, things have begun to open up here. But there's been some states in the Midwest where they really never ever had a lockdown. So it's really been a patchwork quilt in terms of where that sheltering has taken place. Fairfield County, which is where I'm residing and have been through the area, had one of the highest levels of both incidence as well as death. And the
Wow.
reason for that is its proximity to New York. And
Yeah,
of
New
course,
York
that had
was
a big
hit the
impact.
hardest. I mean, if
Yeah,
you're going
yeah,
to
very
look
hard.
at it and put all the red dots in there, I mean, New York is no longer just a bunch of dots in the map. They're practically red.
Yeah, no, it was very devastating there. And of
Mhm.
course, other cities that have high urbanization where people are very close together, particularly before social distancing and
Mm,
masking has really taken a hard hit.
yeah.
But things seem to be, leveling off. Of course, as testing is improved, I think there's still 20,000 new COVID infections every day. But
Mm-hmm.
that's mostly related to the fact that testing, of course, has improved
Mm-hmm.
dramatically in the US. The
Mm-hmm.
deaths, though, as well, has, begin to kind of taper off, but is really more leveling. And there's been areas where it's spiking back up again. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, there's a lot of forecasting that this is going to come back again in the fall. So I don't think we're done with it yet.
Yeah, we're far from over, but at least things are improving, even from our end. I mean, things are getting back on their feet. Public transportation is still a challenge because, you know for a fact that we do have what we call jeepneys here.
That's right. I
So it's
remember the
like,
jeepneys.
yes, there. It's kind of different from the usual buses that we have. Buses are easier
Right.
to segregate and put some social distancing there, but when it comes to jeepneys, it's kind of like hard,
Packed.
and
Yeah.
some of the,
Sardines in a can.
yeah, sardines in a can, indeed. And of course, our rail transit, it's also a challenge because that's one of the most used means of transportation here in the metro. And, having to travel to and from work using rail transit is really a challenge. And they haven't opened it up completely because they know it's going to be like, take a lot of time. So, some are, we were trying to use the transport system like the one like Uber. We don't have Uber here. Uber pulled out, so we have
Right.
what we call Grab, and it's starting to pick up at least. And taxis are also starting to um, service people, of course, with definitely um, measures, countermeasures in order to combat this pandemic, this disease. In your
Right.
case, Brant, I just wanted to ask, what's the most challenging area of your business that you're still having trouble dealing with? I mean, in the light of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think the final stages of hiring companies who obviously are interested and open to remote hiring.
Mm-hmm.
We are certainly engaged with, and during these times, it's a necessity because nobody's going to be showing up at the office
Yeah.
anytime soon. Although that's beginning to shift,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there's still a reluctance to make a hiring decision without having met the person, face to face.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, and we'll be doing a case study on this, we just literally completed a search Friday before last that the
Mm-hmm.
entire process was done remotely.
Wow.
So this person was interviewed, obviously remotely by us, presented to the client remotely.
Mm-hmm.
They went through several rounds of interviews and case studies, and actually they had a social engagement. One of the ideas that they expressed was they always would have, since this was a C-suite placement, a
Mm-hmm.
time to go out with the wives and have the dinner together and get to know each other. So they set that up with Zoom, and
Wow.
they had, the husband and wife, right? Everybody had their computer at the
Mhm.
one seat on the table, and the six couple, or the three couples, the six people in total, had, a breaking of the bread together, and they were able to engage socially. And
Yeah.
that, of course, kind of fulfilled the objective of trying to meet them face to face. So
Mhm.
challenging times, but, I think that as we get processed on a couple of these other searches that were in early stages, there
Mhm.
will have to be some sort of an accommodation for that, regardless of whether the person shows up for work immediately, if that company is obviously bringing people in, or if they're going to be working remotely, or if they work from remotely for a while before they actually come in.
Well, I think that was that was also our, plus factor for skill experts, because we already started doing remote working since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
That we decided to, heck, let's just do remote working from home. We still maintain an office for, especially for those who are living nearby, who wanted to have a change in the environment where they're in, and they wanted to, have interaction with office mates and be able to gather some meetings, and it's still very effective. I mean, physical interaction is still very much in effect. But now with more time to be able to do things at home, being able to, you know, juggle life and work in that sense, that was more effective. So that when the pandemic hit us, it wasn't really that impactful in terms
Right.
of work, because everything is already in place. Everything,
Right.
I think one of the things that businesses should start considering is how to do everything in the cloud. I know some are still very much afraid with security in terms of, you know, internet security, but I guess with the proper tools that you have, it's very effective. It's a very good way of being able to do everything remotely, being able to do everything in the cloud. You can access it anywhere. At the same time, you have that sense of security, being able to, you know, monitor your employees' productivity through
Right.
certain tools. And
Right.
you know that we have Time Doctor for validation, and
Yeah.
that's
Right.
very useful for us. So
Well, one of the things I was going to add, Pam, to that point, one of the
yeah.
things that was true prior to COVID was
Hmm.
that there's been a lot of studies in the US about working remotely because there was
Hmm.
always concerns about productivity.
Yeah.
And the facts are in anywhere between a day to a day and a half per month,
Hmm.
people have increased productivity. So that's 18 days a year. You know, that's like a vacation schedule, number one.
Hmm.
Number two, people are happier, healthier, and they actually have higher retention rates when they work remotely.
That's
And
true.
I'm sure as quite a few people have learned, you know, walking 5 minutes from your bedroom or bathroom to your computer and starting work is a lot different than sitting in traffic for 45 minutes or worse on a jeepney to go
Oh
to work.
yeah, oh yeah,
And
right
and
now
I'll tell
that.
you on the client side, and I've been
Mm.
having a lot of conversations with clients, Pam, about this. Many of them are seeing that level of productivity with the remote workers, and then
Hmm.
they're looking at their expense sheet of
Hmm.
commercial real estate costs and
Hmm.
offices
Hmm.
that are extremely high, particularly in urban centers in the U.S., and saying why. You know, not everybody, of course, can be remote. There's factory workers, and there'll be, you know, certainly assistants. But I imagine that, you know, one of the ramifications of this is there's probably going to be a 30 to a 50% hit on
Hmm.
commercial office real estate
That's right.
because the benefits of having someone there far outweigh the costs, the commute time, the downtime, the productivity, and of course the rents of having offices where people are showing up. So that'll be
Yeah.
a huge shift.
That would probably be a challenge, which brings me to my next question to you. I mean, what are the things, the tasks, or the processes do you think were are now useless at the moment, and what are the tasks or the things that saved your business from collapsing? I
Mm,
mean,
mm.
in this period.
Yeah, well, as I said, my expectation was that things would be very slow, and they haven't been. But you know, obviously, since I have a virtual workforce,
Mm.
literally all over the world, as you know, we're a client of Scale Experts, and we've been
Yes.
working with you for 5, 6 years now, and clearly not a glitch as it relates to the support that your organization has given
Mm.
us has been terrific. I also have a virtual assistant that sits in New Mexico, in the state of New Mexico, and
Mm.
you know she works on a remote plan. She's only focusing on her remote customers. You know, no real glitch there. My
Mm.
web provider and my other kind of senior marketing consultant are
Mm.
also remote. And I'll tell you, it's been a real advantage. I mean, it would
Mm.
be hard pressed for me to say, you know, what negatives have been affiliated with this, only because, if anything, you know, I was expecting us to be very quiet.
Mm.
And while at the same time, you know, took the measures in terms of cutting costs, I think back in February, more March, when we knew this was coming, you know, we were able to eliminate about 20, 30% of our costs through a
That's right.
variety of cost saving measures.
Mm.
But there really hasn't been any downtime. In fact, if anything, you know, we've been very busy and looking for ways in which to create more time. I've pulled a couple of all-nighters, and I was up till about 3 a.m. last night preparing for a
Wow.
client meeting this morning. And I'm too old for that stuff, Pam. So I've got to cut that out. So if anything, you know, we'll be looking to bring on more support particularly if the business continues to be sustained.
Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. And the only thing that's really like, I'm surprised at how you look right now is, I'm not used to seeing you with a beard.
As I said,
But
my
I think
Covidian.
yeah, but I think you're more handsome that way. I think you should keep
Oh,
that.
thank you, Pam.
You
Thank
should
you,
keep
Pam.
that. You should keep that. I like that
As I
because,
said, my father had one in his 60s, and I'm following his lead. So
well, you look handsome. I think you're more handsome that way. Keep it.
thank you.
Well, what tips can you give to business owners when it comes to, kickstarting their business? I mean, at this moment, because I know a lot of people have been suggesting that, you try digital marketing, you should focus on um, digital apps, social media marketing. What are your tips? I mean, as a
Yeah.
business owner, how are you able to keep your business afloat?
Well, I think the trends moving forward to the new normal, which of course is the title of your webinar, are going to be some pretty significant shifts. In the U.S., and I'm not sure how this impacted you in the Philippines, but
Hmm.
post 9/11, which was 20 years ago, which is
Yeah.
hard to imagine it's been that long, there was such a shift in terms of transportation. My kids don't know the difference today because they
Hmm.
obviously travel in a world
Hmm.
where TSA agents, bag checking, X-ray
It
screening,
was the normal.
locked cabin doors. Yeah, I mean, all of that now is the normal. But
Mm,
prior to that, you used to be able to walk right up to the gate and welcome someone when they came in. There
that's
was
right.
no security. Obviously, cabin doors were open. I think one of the biggest changes moving forward will be travel.
Hmm.
Today, the cleaning protocols in place, the wearing of masks, although I've been reading recently that they haven't been overly enforced by airlines, but I think anyone who wants to remain safe, certainly has to dress accordingly to do so.
Hmm.
The screenings that'll be involved at the workplace, I think, are going to shift tremendously.
Hmm.
Everything from temperature taking, which is a little bit almost old school. They
Hmm.
know that so many people are asymptomatic now
That's
that may
right.
not show up. So therefore, being able to have a test, a reliable test, because even the testing hasn't been that reliable in the workplace, will be important.
Hmm.
I'd mentioned restaurants just opened here in Connecticut just in the last couple of weeks, and I've been out twice. And after cooking for
Ah.
myself for about 3 months, it was a big shift and a big change. But you show up, they're dining outside. You have to wear a mask when you go to your table. You can take it off once you're at the table.
Hmm.
Everyone in the restaurant wears a mask. Everything is served on paper plates, plastic cups. These are high-end restaurants, so it's a very different experience. You need binoculars to see the people next to you. No, it's not quite that bad, but they're social distancing people around. So atmospherically, it's a very different experience. It's more intimate with the people that you're with, but you're literally not even able to hear the conversations. Not that you
Hmm.
should be listening anyway, but you can't even hear the conversations with the people that are around you. And I don't think that's going to be going away anytime soon. I think that smart companies are going to be understanding that productivity matters.
Hmm.
And there will be some who will not feel comfortable working from home. I think that's fine. I think allowances need to be made for those who need to show up to an office because they just like that regimen.
Hmm.
But I'll be very surprised if there isn't a significant shift with many major companies that will allow their workforce much more productivity to work at home,
Hmm.
and therefore having the habits to be able to do so.
Hmm.
Setting time schedule wise, being able to have kids in their proper place while you're working, and having the office space to do so. All
Yeah.
of those types of protocols will be important. But I think, we talked about the commercial real estate impact. I think
Hmm.
that many companies that currently have large offices, multiple offices, will see a need for shifts in that area.
Yeah.
I think that we're expecting, kind of a boom in some executive search work, because I think that many CEOs will take a look around their executive suite and evaluate some of the people that they have in key level positions and say, wow, this person did really great through the crisis. We need to promote them, give them more responsibilities. And on the reverse of that, there will also be people that perhaps didn't perform so great in crisis,
That's right.
and they need to be shifted out or take on other responsibilities or released to the industry. And I think that these types of experiences really steal the expertise and the skills of people. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the stronger will survive and come out of it. The workforce has been devastated. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are companies where workers have died. I mean, and there's hardly anyone that I've spoken to in the U.S. that either doesn't know someone that's been infected or regrettably has had either a family member or someone they know have passed from the impact. It's been quite overcoming. I mean, we've had over 100,000 deaths here in the U.S.,
Yeah.
and I can tell you that I know of through either firsthand or secondhand knowledge, at least of about 20 people that have passed
Yeah.
because of it. And I've had actually placements that have gotten the virus, have recovered from it, have gone back to work. And it's almost common now to encounter someone that has either had this virus directly impacted them or someone that they know and love. And I think the other types of shifts that we're expecting to see are obviously unfortunately a lot less familiarity in the workplace, and maybe in
Mm-hmm.
some ways that's good. But the hugs and the encounters, the physical types of things, I
Mm-hmm.
think you're going to find for many months, if not years in the future, that there'll be a certain type of individual, and frankly, I would put myself in that group, would be very less physical,
Mm-hmm.
handshakes, hugs,
Yeah.
encounters, just because you might be of an age or in a healthcare group where you can be exposed.
That's
And
right.
that's going to have its impact too. It's going to have its impact socially, and I think will have its impact on how people interact in the workplace.
That's right.
So I think, and I think to add to that, I think there are going to be companies existing 3 to 5 years from today that we haven't heard about yet that are going to be thriving because they're going to be the innovators. They're going to be the companies that recognize some of these trends and are going to be putting in place, policies, principles, products, and services that
Mm-hmm.
are going to really be adapting and speaking to the new normal in
Yeah.
what we're going to be experiencing both in the workplace and socially. And I can't predict who those are, but they will be household names in a few years time, because
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a huge opportunity for innovation. I think that keeping people safe and finding ways in which people can be more effective to work remotely are going to be huge opportunities for companies in the future.
I agree with you on that one because right now, like a lot of things that had happened, even in Rotary, you know that I'm a Rotary member,
Mm-hmm.
Rotary Club member, and I mean, from having weekly meetings, being able to shift and being able to meet weekly, have the usual fellowship and stuff like that, now being reduced to virtual meetings, and then a lot of old people are really having a hard time dealing with it because they're so used to physical interactions, they're so used to
Right.
hugs, they're so used to handshakes, and now they can't do that. And the very first thing that came into their minds is that how I'm going to serve the community if I can't be physically present with them. But you know what, we're going to have our we're going to have our handover ceremonies, we're going to have our training assembly digitally done, virtually done through Zoom, and it's going to be a huge conference. And it was done. I mean, everyone was surprised that hey, this can be done. So we're going to like continue doing it until such time that we'll be able to, help others and be able to make an impact to the community. So I think that those are the things that will definitely um, affect businesses. And I think businessmen, entrepreneurs should be able to start, shifting to a virtual world or digital world, because they're gonna need it. I mean, in a lot of shop owners, a lot of, business owners who have, small businesses like in the products or retailing. I think they're gonna shift digitally, virtually through online stores, because the e-commerce industry right now, I had so many friends in the e-commerce
Yes.
industry, and they're thriving.
Yes.
Amazon's sales, I mean, at the moment has shot higher than the usual. I think 30,
Yeah.
40% than the
Yeah.
usual. I mean, if that can happen, so I think more shop owners should be able to, be able to shift to that direction, and be able to use the social media tools that we have in order for, in order to promote their businesses
Yeah,
um,
I want to share with you
virtually.
a quick story, if I may. I run
Yes.
a CEO podcast called Into the
Uh-huh.
Corner Office,
Yes.
and we've had about 120 guests so far that have been released over the last. We're going into our third season actually this year,
Wow,
and
I've watched
we've
one.
had.
It was
Thank
good.
you. Yeah, terrific. Well, this one hasn't been released yet, but it'll give you an example of the shift you're actually talking about. David Collum, who's based in the state of New York, runs a
Mhm.
national organization called the Pocket Testament League. And
Mhm.
what they do is they distribute the Book of John. It's a
Mhm.
religious organization, and the
Okay.
Book of John is a very nice, concise message of the story of Jesus and the gospel.
Yeah.
And they pre-COVID distributed about 50,000 of these through one of their key, distribution centers. And they go through homeless shelters and many of the folks who are downtrodden. And of course, obviously, many of these are given off, face to face and hand
Mhm.
to hand. But during COVID, of course, that's all been stopped, and it's been a little distressing. But they've seen more than a five-fold increase in terms of the demand, because what's happened, of course, is that there's an increased number of people that are, of course, are needy, and the food shelters are giving out more and more food. So they've
Mhm.
gone from 50,000 to 250,000
How?
distribution. And they've also started a digital program to what you've said, and they've had literally millions that they've been able to distribute. So here's a CEO who's recognizing the situation. He's very frustrated because he knows how important that personal contact is. And
Mhm.
yet he's seeing this huge shift towards more digital distribution of the Book of John, as
Mhm.
well as obviously the shelters and the various folks who are serving the poor and the needy having this increased demand. So, it's been great for his business, and
Mhm.
for obviously, getting the word out literally
Yeah, literally.
for their business. And so, yeah, those types of shifts, I think, we're going to see. And I think the companies that are very open to figuring out how to modify their business model to a more digital world,
Mhm.
and also, of course, particularly those that, like in my business, that really rely on that personal touch and that personal communication, can find other ways in which to do so.
Yeah,
Like having a social dinner Zoom call, right? It's not ideal, but
true.
at least you're in a position where you can share the types of things. And the technology really, I think, has come a long way and will continue to improve. And probably one of the companies that we haven't heard of yet will be upgrades to this technology in Zoom,
Yeah.
right? Where there is just so much better connection, and certainly maybe more choices and varieties of distribution. I mean, I'm not a creative person, so I can't come
Yeah.
around to it. But I think technology will help us through this, and there will be, I think, significant changes in how technology will aid the work process moving forward.
And I think that was, I mean, technology, I think, plays a big role in keeping, keeping the sanity of the people, if you know what I mean. Because, I mean, everything can be accessed online, everything can be accessed digitally. You can have your smartphone and work as practically work as your office. depending on what type of smartphone you have, but you could practically work on your phone, be able to get the latest news, be able to send email from that, be able to promote your business through social media channels. We have
Right.
Instagram, we have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, we even have like whatever email, whatever social apps that we have. Even Snapchat is being used for business. So imagine that.
Mm.
Even TikTok, which is like a Chinese video app that's being used for business. So even everything is, everything can be done digitally, and I think the business owner just need to recognize that this is the new normal, this is the new way for you to promote your business. And they just have to let the word out that, hey, here I am, I can offer these services. The service industry, I think, are the most affected with this transition, that they have to, like what you said, be able to put in health protocols on how to conduct their services safely. Like barbers need to wear, they have to wear masks, they have to wear goggles, they also have to wear gloves. I mean,
Right.
I have a lot of dentist friends
Mm.
who had to have to shift, and how they're going to put a some sort of a shield in front of the patient
Right.
while them being able to like do the dentures or whatever cleaning
Right.
for that
Right.
matter. I mean, even though they're wearing their face mask, they also have to like put on some sort of a shield
Yeah.
on top of the patient. It's quite innovating. So and you can see there how creativity brings out the best in people in these times of crisis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. We'll
I
see a
think
lot of that.
we'll definitely see a lot of that. So, in this case, what investment can you give to recruiters to keep their businesses proof? Because I know a lot of recruiters have been affected, and those are, especially those who are based in New York. I mean, they actually ask for relief or some sort of like
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
rebate or discount, at least to help them through these times. And I perfectly understand. UK isn't. I haven't heard much
Yeah.
from recruiters in the UK, but definitely those in the East Coast have been affected a lot. So, what can you give them? What strategies can you offer them?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question, Pam. I think it varies by sector. Many recruiters, of course, are focused on individual industries, and if
Hmm.
you did only restaurant or hospitality, chances are you've been twiddling your thumbs for the last couple of months because
Yeah,
so many of those businesses, of course, not only had to furlough or release folks, many of them will not come back.
yeah,
The restaurant industry, I think, works at about 6 to 8 weeks cash flow. So what that means is if they're closed longer than 6 to 8 weeks, they're cooked. I mean, literally,
hmm,
they're not able to survive because they, have to go into debt to continue to cover their costs.
true,
And
true.
one of the recent podcasts I was listening to was talking about the restaurant scene in New York and other major metros.
Hmm.
It's going to be very different, not only experientially, as we've talked earlier, but many
Hmm.
of them will not come back. And so there will be many fewer restaurants, and those that are willing to make the investment, will have to operate on a very different scale because they're talking 25, 50% occupancy in terms of where they were before. So
Hmm.
I think recruiters that perhaps have been focusing on the non-essential industries are ones that have been hit the hardest, probably have to broaden their scope with regards to where else they can work.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see more of a U-shaped recovery. We began to see this last week or last month rather, with the jobless law, the jobless gains. There were over 2 million new jobs that came out. Unemployment shifted down about a point and a half, 2 points. I think we're going to kind of see that, but I think there's going to be a slow return, and then I think we're going to also see another dip that's going to come in the fall. Probably not as harsh one economically, as hopefully we'll all be better prepared for it, but there will be an impact. So I think recruiters have to evaluate the niches they want to serve. Number one. Number two, I think focusing and understanding the trends of what CEOs and companies will be doing in terms of hiring. Are
Yeah.
they companies that are going to demand to have people come back to the office and be rigid about that? To me, they'll have their own Darwinian end. I can't imagine that companies that will insist for employees to come back are going to keep good employees. There are going to be people, I know several of them, and I've heard this in the market, that will continue to be resistant,
Hmm.
even when they're convinced that it's safe to go out again. I don't think there'll ever be an effective vaccine. This is a version of the flu. They've never been able to get a flu vaccine that works. So I
Yeah.
don't expect that there's going to be a COVID vaccine that's going to be of high level of effectiveness.
Well,
So I think
they haven't found a cure for SARS. That's for one, and
that's right.
I
And they
mean,
won't. It
COVID
evolves
is COVID is an evolution of
as a
SARS,
SARS. Yeah, exactly.
H1N1 virus as well. They haven't really found they haven't really found a virus for it. I mean, the cure for it, but I mean,
There's no silver bullet.
there's
This
no
is
survival.
not going to
Yeah.
be this is not going to be we can get tests, we can find out if we have the antibodies, we
Mm,
can determine whether we've had it or not. But there's no magic vaccine coming. They just will
yeah.
not be able to develop it. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I don't believe that that's going to be the case. So
Yeah.
I think companies, I think recruiters, back to your question, need to recognize that the workforce is going to look different.
Mm,
And I think it's part of our job as recruiters to educate business owners about
mm,
what that new normal looks like. I think
mm,
they have to be more flexible with regards to hiring remote employees, even in the C-suite. A
mm,
couple of years ago, I had a CFO search that was out on the West Coast, found the perfect candidate. He was based in the Midwest, but
mm.
his wife had a law practice. He had kids in high school. It was not effective for him to move. And
Yeah.
the CEO was a little bit of old school and wanted the CEO there,
Mm,
despite the fact that it would be disruptive to the family. The
mm.
wife would no longer have the income, and he'd be moving to a place where he would have to double the salary.
Yeah,
And they
that's right.
passed on the candidate. I'm sure if I had a conversation with that CFO today, he would say, yeah, I'd probably rethink that now, because
Mm,
keeping the guy in St. Louis and
mm,
having him work remotely, coming out maybe once or twice a quarter, even as a CFO, is something that could be workable now with technology. And
that's right.
I think part of what recruiters need to do is to educate their clients about what that new normal looks like, and help them understand and get over whatever prejudices they have about having that executive down the hall.
True,
And I
true.
think thirdly, and certainly not least, I think to your business, Pam, having remote support as a recruiter is key.
Mm,
This is a business that doesn't require an office. It doesn't require having a lot of people around you. We can do most of our connection remotely, and we should look for ways in which to use remote services like yourself
yeah.
that can help support the business, because it helps keep employment globally, which is one of the
Mm,
things I know and love. And I've lived in Asia for a number of years, had an
yeah.
office in Manila, and very
Yes.
familiar with their company and culture. And just a little plug for you, have been very satisfied with the folks that you've served, and others that we've referred to you that you've served.
Thank
And
you.
I think
Thank you.
if a recruiter is not working with the remote workforce, he or she is probably spending too much
Hmm.
in their own infrastructure costs. And,
Hmm.
like we do, we should recommend, getting our clients to look more at remote hiring, of course, is a very important part of our role.
That's right. That's right. And I appreciate that you've stayed with us for, how many years? It's been like what, 5 years already that you've
I
been
think
with
close to
us?
5. Yeah, I think we're
Close to
going into our
5,
sixth
yeah,
year. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, but I still look forward to the coffee that we're going to have. Hopefully next year.
Post
Hopefully
COVID.
next, yeah,
Post COVID.
post COVID. But I did enjoy the coffee that we have in San
We
Bruno.
did meet. That's right.
Yeah, we
Yes,
did.
we did meet a couple of years ago.
And
I
I
remember
was so surprised how tall you are.
that.
I did not expect a tall man towering over me and saying, "Do you want some coffee?" I'm like, what? Anyways, but I'm glad. I'm glad that remote staffing, like what we do, like help you out. I mean, there are some misconceptions. They thought that if we're going to hire um, remote services like us would mean more expenses for them, but it's actually, a different case, because I mean, while you wanted to focus on the key personnel that you wanted to be in your business, you need to have someone do the smaller tasks that keeps you from being more productive. And I think that's the notion that some business people do not understand, and that's also one of the goals that I do before I actually ask a client, to trust us, because you have to like educate them on how remote staffing works. I mean, we're not going to take away the jobs of people who are essential to your business. It's more of like we're taking away those tasks that are keeping them from being productive. I mean, there
Yeah,
are
Pam,
some.
one of the things that I've learned, and
Yeah.
I think to add to my last answer, that recruiters can help their clients, is remote works best when there's a very specific assigned task,
Hmm.
very clear expectations about what needs to get done, and a process by which there's reporting and continued evaluation of productivity.
That's right.
I learned the hard way, and we don't need to get into that,
Yeah, I
that
know.
I devoted and delegated a lot more work to one of my remote workers in the past, which was, when I've gone back and looked at that situation, my error. And, not that that person wasn't capable of doing it, but it led to a relationship that got out of control.
That's right.
And I think, as I would work with you moving forward, and as any recruiter would work with you, or any other virtual, assistant provider, I think keeping a narrow scope,
Hmm.
having continuous interaction, being able to evaluate effectivity and productivity, and having, recourse if that productivity is not there, is extremely key.
That's
And I
right.
think the same is true in the professional workplace in the States.
Hmm.
I tell my clients who are in the process of maybe hiring someone remotely for the first time, I give them that same advice. You
Hmm.
know, if you're having someone that's remote, that you're not going to be seeing every day and having that kind of ongoing interaction, have a very clear, specific scope of work, have, a way in which you can monitor productivity and be able to evaluate it, and then have the next steps taken if that productivity, goes off the tracks. And
Hmm.
I think that's critical in managing any kind of a remote workforce.
That's true. That's very true. And I really thank you for trusting us with this, with this partnership, because it's it's not easy to establish, especially if you don't have any clear goals. And there are some instances wherein people, or some of my relationships with some clients, fail because they don't have a clear understanding on what to give to their VAs or virtual
Right.
assistants. The next thing they knew, they said, I can't do it. I can't assign tasks to you because I don't know what task. So I think the very first thing that they need to understand first is, what do you want your virtual assistant to do? I mean, so that you can identify what task needs to be done. You can set clear goals for it and be able to monitor that on a
Absolutely.
daily, weekly, and monthly basis. The
Absolutely.
advantage that we can give, however, and that's also one thing that we want to share to all clients that we have, potential and or current clients, is that we have our own monitoring systems, because
Right.
the bad experience that we have heard from clients before is that either they have like a freelancer that suddenly bailed out on them, and they haven't heard from this person from a day or two, and they don't know how to reach this person. And we have a VA manager who can continuously connect with you and be able to let you know what's happening. And if there's a problem that will be encountered along the way, we will be able to set some parameters on how we can fix that, or how we can rectify the situation, or we can avoid going into that, a disaster, if you know what
Yeah,
I
no,
mean.
I
So.
absolutely, Pam, and I have to say that's a distinguishing factor, and one of the reasons why, we chose to go with you. ROI chose to go with Scale
Mm,
Experts, was that internal monitoring, and I know you've improved it even over the time that
mhm,
we've been together. Um, and I think, again, to extend it to the professional workplace, that
mhm.
same sort of system has to be in place for their workforce, right?
Yes,
To have
internally.
that that have that internally ongoing monitoring if you really want remote working to be successful.
That's right. That's right. And I think that that's the one thing that they have to like start to accept, because this is not going to be, this quarantine period, this particular situation, the new normal won't be going back to the way things are. This is going to change the way
That's
we
right.
work. It's going to change the way we interact to people. It's going to change the way we communicate. There would
It's
be.
it's going to have it's going to be as much of an impact as the post 9/11 world was on
Yeah,
travel, but in all facets of our economy.
that's
In
right.
the service industry, the restaurants we go to, the hotels we use, the transportation, our work environment, anywhere we interact socially, which is pretty much everywhere.
E-
Our churches, everything is going to be
Everything,
impacted by this.
everything. Even the stock market is high, hugely affected by this crisis. I mean, stock prices are going down, and I've been monitoring that. My husband has been monitoring that, and they have never seen a slump in stock market prices this
Yeah.
low ever since. So it's going to impact the world economy globally. Um, but I think it's how we're going to respond to it that will be successful. All right. So, um, Brad, do you have any questions for me? Like,
No, Pam, this has been great, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. I hope those that are listening today and those that may be watching this webinar at some point in the future, can benefit from that. And if there's
mm,
any further questions, by all means, contact Pam, and she can put you in touch with me.
all right, all right. So, we have some people here, and thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or probably chat or give us a chat, and we'll be able to answer before we conclude this webinar. Oh, I think we do have one. All right. So I guess we're good. And Brand, how are they going to check out your resource options? What's your website so we can
Right. Oh, thank
promote?
you. Yes, my website is go4roi.com. So www.go, the number 4, ROI, Richard, Oregon, Ida.com. So they can find out more about our executive recruiting at that location. Thank you.
Wow, wow. And you're covering all states, right?
That's right. Yes, we have offices both in California and Connecticut. I've chosen to shelter here in Connecticut over the last several months, and I've got a lovely lake house here, and it's in a kind of bucolic community where there's not too many people around, so it's been safe. But
Wow.
I will return to California at some point in time, although I'm not sure when. I'm not quite ready for the travel experience, and
Yeah,
it's
the
it's
travel.
kind of a far drive, so it
It
may
is, it
be
is.
another
I
month or
mean,
two.
from end to end. Oh my God.
It's 3,000 miles. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
How long will it
exactly.
take you by car? I hope you don't mind me
If
asking.
you did it in a straight shot, I suppose you can do it in a few days. But I've done it once before. I think I took about 7 to 10 days driving about 6 or 7 hours a day. And my son lived in the Midwest at the time, and I had a weekend with him. But I can't drive more than 6 or 7 hours a day. I just it's
Wow.
if I'm alone, if I was to do it alone. If you did it with someone else, you could probably do it in 2 or 3 days. So.
Wow, that is something. I mean, I couldn't stay in the plane for like 6, 7 hours. Boston to San Francisco. That was a terrible, you know, flight for me. I mean, long
Right.
haul flights
Right.
is already boring to
And
be
then you add
mentioned.
the
I mean,
health add
imagine.
the health concerns to it. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So,
So, in our case, for anyone who's listening, our website is the www.thescaleexperts.com, and you can see, and you'll be able to see what we do, what about us, what are the services that we're offering. So it's not only just for recruiters; we're also servicing apps. Actually, the major clients that we have that are unaffected by the crisis are actually mobile
app
apps.
development. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
social
surprising.
apps. Um, and I think that's also very helpful, something for businesses to think about and how to, digitize their business. So, for more information, you can, message me on LinkedIn, Brandt, for any advices. You have been my mentor, Brandt. You've been, you're not only our client, you've been our mentor, you've been our number one supporter, and I really, really thank you for everything that you have done for us, and so many nuggets of wisdom I got from you.
Well, vice versa, Pam. And it's a pleasure to work with you. And thank you for having me on today.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who have attended our webinar. And hopefully this is not the last. We're going to have more of this soon. All
Have a
righty.
great day. All
Have a
right.
great day. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.